Hello everyone. I just wanted to start off by saying a huge thank you to all your support in 2023 and all the people that have been watching our podcast and our videos. We are so grateful for an audience, and as we continue to grow and start our journey, we are so grateful for every single person that's been watching us. What would really support us is if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel as well as follow us on Instagram and TikTok. It'll really help us to be able to grow and reach a better audience. And also please engage with our videos. If you like something, please like it. Let us know what you think about our videos in the comment section. What we've seen is a lot of growth in Australia in the technology industry, and from the guests and from people that all of us have been talking to. It's gonna look a lot different as we move forward as a country in the coming years. And we'll be right here to break down all the things that are being developed in Australia. We're just here to break those things down and help you to understand what Australia is going to look like. Just a quick disclaimer as well that the views and opinions expressed in the Noor podcast are those of the host and the guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the podcast. The content provided is for informational purposes only and should not be taken as professional advice. The Noor podcast is not responsible for any actions taken as a result of listening to this podcast. Listeners are encouraged to do their own research and consult with relevant professionals before making decisions. In today's episode, we are interviewing Justyce Manton. I met Justyce as part of some work that we were doing for DEGSA. We're going to be working together this year. She is just an amazing person, such potential, and she's just doing such amazing things. And we interview her to just find out more about what she's working on, what she's interested in, and just what makes someone like that tick. I don't want to reveal too much onto the episode, but it's just amazing to see what she has done and what she clearly is going to do in the future. Thank you for coming and tuning into this episode. It's a really good one. There's a lot of insights in this, so please try to make it to the end. You won't regret
it. They were first contact. So a part of the first fleet when they started to dock on Sydney. My great-great-grandfather, he was a lawman, and he was also a warrior, and what he was protecting was our song line, so orally our song line.
And when you do engineering in defense, for example, or civil or whatever other field you have, you are helping people, but it's like very implicit. Maybe down the line you help someone, and you don't see that person that you help. Mm-hmm. You don't have exposure to that. Where in medical technologies, the need is very evident. Yeah. And like if you're doing cancer research, for example, you can rest assured that your work is directly going to save lives.
I completely agree, because I was talking to a guy and he posted a position on LinkedIn, and all the applicants were men. And when a man was hired for that role, you get backlash of, oh, well, how come women aren't doing it? And I'm like, well, they're not applying. Yeah. That's the basic.
Maybe we can say why we started this podcast. Maybe some background on that.
Okay.
Yeah. Because it initially started on doing just an episode for the event that you guys, the hackathon. Yeah. And then we sat down and we're just like, we talk a lot of shit. Let's record it and let the world know.
That's right. Yeah.
So,
we go well. I think what's our goal is kind of, maybe you can explain the name.
No. Yeah. You know that better than I do.
Well, I think I do. So Noor stands for light and wisdom. It's a Arabic word. Originally Arabic.
But even in Hindi, it sort of has a little bit.
But it Noor's in both. So I'm from India, they're from Afghanistan, he's from Iran. Yeah. And in all of our languages, Noor means light and wisdom. Okay. And so the Noor podcast, we are here to shed light and wisdom into us.
I like that. I really like that.
Shedding light and wisdom into culture and lifestyle and also different industries in Australia of how things are going to change because of disruptive technologies. And because the future with AI, especially coming out in the last 2 years, everything's been, any kind of forecast anyone had has now been shattered, and it's all kind of cloudy. So we're trying to as people that work in the space, try to shed some light.
It started with just tech, and then for some reason the first episode we did was just all culture. And then that did really well. So then we're like, okay, let's focus on culture, but then bring the tech into it.
Well, it's relatable.
Yeah.
You know, like, I can't really relate to someone who doesn't really talk about their culture,
Mm.
especially in a workplace. I'm like, yeah, I can work with them, but like if I don't really know anything about your background, how can I relate
You can't
socially?
connect.
You
can't
cannot connect with anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even like when you interview someone, it's not like for a role, they don't look at just, your capabilities and your skills. They look at like
History.
history.
Yeah.
But also if you can talk well, if you
Mm.
work well with others, and also like inclusivity and
Just a number of different.
yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay, so I was gonna start with you, Justice.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Maybe could you introduce
Yeah.
yourself and what you kind of do?
Yeah, so I'm Justyce Manton. Let's start with like career aspects first, then we'll talk about my demographic and like family. But I'm second year mechanical engineering majoring in aerospace. I work at Pernix, which is a data governance company. We deal with a lot with like integration for like certain platforms. And I also internship at Innovor Technologies. I'm a big space advocate, and I think that mostly comes from my background. So born and raised in Sydney, I am Aboriginal, so my tribes are Eora Wiradjuri. I love space. It's in my blood. It's in my culture. My people were
How can you explain that?
Huh?
Why is space in your culture?
Well, it's a bit personal, and it gets a bit too heavy on the cultural side, but I will see if I can explain.
Okay.
So my tribe, Eora, which is the Sydney, tribe, clan, they were first contact. So a part of the first fleet when they started to dock on Sydney, my great-great-grandfather, he was a lawman, and he was also a warrior, and what he was protecting was our song line, so orally our song line. And that song line included mostly with space. So that's how my connection comes into it. It's a bit much, and sometimes it feels like a bit of a fantasy because it's been so long ago. But it's so important, and it's literally in my DNA. Yeah.
I'm just curious. Do your parents fully understand what exactly you do?
No. So I was sitting down with my mum in high school, and we were looking at sort of the list of degree options that we can go into. And she quickly went past aeronautical engineer, and she's like, okay, we don't need to worry about that. That's fine. Let's just go into like teaching or like medicine. And I was like, you don't think I can do it? And she said, no, it's not that. It's just, it's different, and we haven't, like in my family, I'm the first engineer or even university person to go to university. So she was very, how do I put this, concerned of the unknown. And I said, well, I'm going to prove you wrong. Yeah, and here I am today.
There you go.
Yeah.
And so you're studying aeronautical engineering?
Yeah, so mechanical.
university, right?
Yeah, mechanical aerospace major.
So you said you were really interested in space, right?
Yeah.
Could you maybe tell us what does Australia do in the space industry? Like, what's our role?
Yeah, so it's quite small, to be honest, compared to, the more generic common like NASA or the European Space Agency or JAXA, which is the Japanese Space Agency. We do not compare at all. We are definitely on the smaller scale of industry as well as economy for space and defence even. But I feel like we're getting there. We're progressing slowly. We do have a lot of up-and-coming new projects, which is exciting. And I think what makes Australia different in space, even on an international level with NASA, is, we have these new opportunities. We don't have to do everything traditional. Like with NASA, it'd be based on historical data, and your routine would be what someone else did 2 generations before you. Now we come in with a completely new idea aspect. What we bring to the table is definitely different given our diversity. But also with diversity, I feel like it talks about Australia's pride, right? We're all diverse. Well, it speaks of our space industry. We're all diverse, and we bring something new to the table, which helps us achieve what we need to.
And obviously we love South Australia here, so I'm guessing that's why you're in Adelaide and you're not in
Yeah.
Sydney, because of the space here.
Yeah, definitely. The space hub is Adelaide. there's so many opportunities, like demographically, and then also I just guess from a research point of view, we're ahead of everyone else, if that makes sense. And it's just a community here. Like you have more passionate people that are in a demand, I guess, for space. So yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, obviously today's episode is not actually about space.
No.
Even though we could have another one about space and bring her in as well.
I mean, if there's enough
Very
interest,
qualified.
we can definitely set up another one.
So obviously today's episode is about medical technology.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe could you tell the audience why you are relevant in medical technology?
Yeah. So alongside my my bachelor's, I'm also doing my PhD, which is in biomarkers for AI, so machine learning, so detection of cancer, mainly prostate. Just doing a lot of alignment algorithms and new research with that, which is pretty cool.
Cool. Now, how are you doing a PhD? You're doing a bachelor's.
I get this question a lot. It's conditional. I love programming. I love software development and applications, machine learning, and I don't want to sound like I'm bragging, but I am quite good at it because I do enjoy it. But it's conditional on my studies. As long as I'm doing well in my bachelor's, I can do my PhD. And it's just a research area that I was not interested at all, like medicine. I wanted to leave medicine at year 10 and be done with it. Like biology, I was like, it's not happening. My teacher was like, it's not for you. And I was like, I completely agree, let's go.
Yeah.
But then I didn't realize my brain, couldn't, I guess, comprehend how different disciplinaries sort of loop with each other. And medical technology is up and coming. Definitely not at the forefront in Australia, but I feel like we're slowly progressing there. Yeah.
So you're obviously saying that you, with engineering background and interest in computer science, can still do a PhD.
Most definitely. Yeah, most definitely.
Don't you have to like biology? Or
yeah. So no. Well, I'm going to tell. Like, I met the professor at a cafe. He was the head of the department. He was reading something, and I sort of said, "Oh, yeah, I read that article. It's great."
This is an Adelaide.
this is an Adelaide thing.
It's because of how small we are.
Yeah, and we just started chatting, and he loves more the medical side of things, and I brought to the table the machine learning and software side of things. And he said, "Oh, there's a position in my department, and I'd love for you to come and check out the department and see if you like it, and we'll give you a tour." So I went, and I fell in love not only with the labs or anything like that, but just the technology that they have there. And I thought I could really help and make an impact there with research. And so I sat down with him and we discussed these things, and he was fully on board, surprisingly, as like a professor, especially head of a department. I thought, oh, no, you're still doing your bachelor's, we can't have you. But yeah, things sort of just worked out.
Yeah. So I'm curious, is this an exception they make for everyone?
Well, yes and no. I mean, it depends. I think you really have to find the right people. But also at the same time, if you're not passionate and you're just doing it because you want to get ahead of everyone else or just do a PhD because it sounds cool, then you're not going to get very far. I didn't want to do a PhD to even begin with. I was just content with graduating and being in the defence space sector. But then I realised, no, my passion is within the research realm, and I don't think I want to leave it. I just, like learning, and I think if you have a passion for it, things sort of align. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think, sorry?
Oh, no.
I was going to say, obviously it looks like you have quite... Well, the question I was going to ask was, it sounds like you are very interested in engineering, but you're also very interested in the medical side of things. And I was going to say, how are you going to pick one? But from what you said, it sounds like you don't have to. You can do engineering in the medical field.
Yeah, this is what I mean. When I go to workshops at schools, they're so narrow-minded with their thinking. They think, take space, for an example. They think, space isn't for me. I might as well just do, I don't know, like PE or, health science. And I'm like, no, what about you're not applying it to this like overall space sector? Astronauts need to have nutrition, they need dieting, they need to be able to have like exercise up on the space station. So they need people with these degrees. They also need space lawyers because there's space law. And I only found out that about like 2 years ago, and it still blew my mind. But yeah, there's just so many things that people don't think about, but it's all necessary. And it's not just for space, it could be medicine as well. You know, medicine, like they need engineers for certain technologies, like X-ray machines and, you know, biodetectors, you know, so it's, yeah, it doesn't stop there.
So did someone speak to you about the opportunities in space when you were in high school? Because I feel like back then, even though it was only like 3 years ago,
Yeah.
it wouldn't have been that. Because that's
No.
just booming now, right?
Yeah,
So-
it's just booming now. I got in year 12, I got accepted into a gifted program with Adelaide University, and I was introduced to engineering there, and it was more focused on civil. I didn't really like civil engineering, but I loved the.
Mark is a master in civil
I'm so sorry. No, but I love the idea of like trial and error and like validation. And yeah, mechanical was more my route. Background with family, I'm sort of, yeah, I had all uncles growing up. They were mechanics. They loved their cars. You know, it wasn't, oh, let's watch, you know, this on a Sunday. No, we're watching Bathurst. That's going to be all day. So that was my influence, and I just, yeah, love hands-on work. So yeah, civil was not for me, but mechanical is, yeah.
Okay, so how did you, sorry, go ahead.
No. Processing.
So how did you transfer from civil to mechanical? Did you just, because you got
okay, so
accepted into the gifted program?
yeah, the gifted
for civil?
program. Yeah, no, so the gifted program, I was accepted on the basis of my mathematics, physics, and science.
Yeah.
But we were introduced to different disciplinaries. We also did out at, I think it's called the Rosemary campus, we did like wine and stuff. I could care less about that stuff. It was the most boring subject ever. But like, yeah, no, it was, civil was sort of the main push of engineering. We didn't really do a lot of mechanical, even computer science. We didn't really do a lot of that. It was just, it was mostly civil, and then, you know, we just did extra mathematics and physics and science on top. But you know, this is what it could lead to. So,
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's really interesting when you talk about, I mean, obviously, applying engineering in a medical sense compared to, like, for example, a defense sense. Like, I have a couple of friends who are thinking more in that medical side, and I think the argument they made was that, you know, at the end of the day, they want to be engineers because they want to help people. And when you do engineering in defense, for example, or civil or whatever other field you have, you are helping people, but it's like very implicit. You know, maybe down the line you'll help someone. Like, and you don't see that person that you help. You don't have exposure to that. Where in medical technologies, the need is very evident.
Yeah.
And like if you're doing cancer research, for example, like you can rest assured that your work is directly going to save lives. Yeah. And I think that's really special. So
yeah, it's it is. Now that you mention it, looking back, like you do interact with patients and stuff to see how like not the technology it's going, but like to hear user cases, right? And you sort of build on that, and it's more like the emotional side sort of comes into play, and it's amazing to know that 5 years down the track, this technology could help benefit, if not them, then what about someone in their family generation that was diagnosed with that had it. What do you call it, within the family, so that makes sense. But yeah, the emotional side does come into play, and I definitely know with engineering, mechanical, you don't see them at all. You know, you just do the projects and that's it. You send it off, like you finish, complete your sprint, whatever, it's done. But yeah, to know that, well, now know that, you know, you could be benefiting others, it is good. So
obviously you said you had a computer science background as well. But you're doing mechanical.
So
where does that come into play? How did you learn that?
So I'm just doing a single degree, which is mech eng. But I did computer science in like my spare time, so like a hobby. I also went to 42 Adelaide, which is like a free software sort of coding academy / school. And that's where you can do real life projects. The language we learned there was C, and it was, you know, real life projects that you could go through as a team, and you're sort of chucked in the deep end. Like they don't give you, there's no lecturers, there's no TAs, there's nothing like that. You have to learn off each other, which is so applicable in the software realm, because you really have to step out of your comfort zone and ask someone for help. If not, like you Google, right? But if that doesn't work, you have to ask someone for help. So I fell in love with like the programming, writing programs. I'm very much into 80s games. So
really?
yeah, I love like Pac-Man, I love Zelda, I like Bomb Jack, all arcade games.
Yeah.
So me and my brother, we'd like modify them, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. That's our hobby. But to be able
you would modify 80s games?
modify 80s games. So we'd sort of like design them to like what we want. So we could take a sample and Pac-Man and turn the like little squid whatever thingies that they are and make them the good guys and Pac-Man the bad guys, you know what I mean, and do like certain power-ups and stuff. We could do like snakes and ladders and stuff like that. But yeah.
Would this be like open source?
Yeah, open source.
Yeah.
It's a lot of open source stuff. Like in high school, it wasn't like we couldn't get everything, so there's a lot of.
But have you done
stuff.
anything like from scratch with?
Yeah.
metal?
No, not from scratch. Besides like how would I put this? Working in different companies and doing platforms and stuff. I haven't done anything like in scratch for hobby wise.
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah.
All right. Now, obviously, before coming on, I wanted to talk a bit about like the future of medical technologies in Australia and maybe kind of where you like from the research that you've done and from the exposure that you've had, where you see that it's going, and what kind of fields and spaces are there for innovation.
Yeah, I feel like, as I said before, we're not on the forefront. We are progressing slowly. I feel like we do have a lot of researchers that are keen to push it even more, the boundaries even more. I do know at the mod building, I went to a research workshop exposure, and it was called, it was on pain and basically 3D models that they would create on pain. So instead of doing a scale of 1 to 10, because everyone pain varies and, we're not going to feel the same thing of pain, but they'll create 3D models of like a bee sting, basically. And, if you think
3D model.
Yeah, 3D model. So if you think of a bee sting, it'd be like sharp, you know what I mean? So the model would be like spiky, right?
Oh, like what you would think?
Yeah, like what you think
looks like?
would pain would be. Yeah, what it would look like. Yeah, so I think that's very interesting because like what if doctors use that in hospitals instead of saying, oh, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how much in pain are you? Yeah. And you could be like, oh, well, I feel like that where it's sharp. So it'd be like spiky or it's throbbing. You could be like, it's wavy, but then there's spikes up, to pinpoint.
That's
very interesting.
Yeah,
because
that's so cool.
I mean, I can sort of relate in terms of having experiences with the medical side where some doctors are very, I think, because they've been there for so long, you sort of go, okay, so we've done this procedure. From 1 to 10, what do you feel? And you go, it's still a 10. They're like, it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Like, but it is. Whereas I think if you give them a 3D representation, saying, okay, this is sort of a visual representation of what I may potentially be feeling, I think that could definitely alleviate a lot of misunderstanding.
Yeah, and for some reason when I think of like pain that I've had, that makes a lot of sense. Like I can visualize.
Yeah.
That's why people say stabbing pain, like it's like sharp.
Yeah, because it'd be different from like a bee sting to like breaking your foot, right? So yeah, I think it's so applicable. Like it would help with diagnosis, and it would help on a level where you can understand the patient, and it's not just if she's an 8, we'll just put her over here and give her more medication to help soothe her, but that might not necessarily be the problem. So yeah, it was very interesting. I loved it. Yeah.
So obviously you moved from Sydney to pursue space here at Adelaide, and obviously we know. And we've established, we're here at Lot 14 today, that space is booming. What about the medical industry in South Australia?
Yeah, so
compared to other parts of Australia as well.
Yeah, so I can't speak mostly like on Sydney or like Melbourne, but I feel like here we are definitely, along with space medicine, is really coming along.
Space medicine.
Yes, space medicine.
Space medicine.
My one of my friends was doing a course like being a space doctor, like the requirements and stuff, and I was like, that's so cool. Imagine having the title. What do you do? I'm a space doctor.
Yeah, wow.
But
is it like physical things that stop you from doing that? Because you have to be physically capable.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, you do. You go through like certain number of like qualifications and testing, obviously, to be like a space doctor. But yeah, for like her research within the space doctor realm was she was partnering with the European Space Agency on gravitational beds and like astronauts sleeping as well as people sleeping with like insomnia. And I was like, whoa, that's so cool. And like you wouldn't think of it, right?
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you have to kind of everything that we do on Earth now. When you go to space, it's different, and we don't know how that change in gravity.
There
That's
has
changing
to be a lot of
atmosphere.
theoretical
Yeah.
views on something.
Yeah.
And I think that's where having that background of the engineering side, I really think makes a big difference. Like moving forward, you need to have that intuition of the engineer, and that, like curiosity, backed with the sort of the foundational research of medicine, and mold that together, and you can sort of use the existing knowledge that we've built for medicine of pre-existing conditions and things like that to then forecast what potentially the variables from space could impact. But one thing I wanted to know was, because your sort of experience is mainly, and your interest has been mainly in engineering, having started the PhD, I'm assuming that your knowledge in medicine is definitely expanding.
100%, 100%. How do I put this? With medical technology, it's benefited me more with like even just textbook learning at uni. It's broadened my scope on different ranges to use the technology and different implications to it. Not only for medicine, but like I can think of other different fields like biodiversity. It ties in with like a bit of my up and coming research with Monash as well. With biodiversity and native plants, as well as engineering, as well as medicine.
Just a subtle point.
I just thought I'd bring it up. But yeah, it's so multi-diverse, and it just benefits. Look, if I could give someone advice, don't narrow your, don't have tunnel vision. Really broaden your scope, and don't think that you'll get locked into one thing, because it always benefits other things.
Do you think that you're thinning yourself out a little bit? To have so many open tabs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, in your brain?
Yeah. No.
There's more.
No, there's more. Well, yes. Look, yes and no. Yes, at moments, like some moments I do have where I'm like, oh, I am doing too much, or like it is a lot. But other moments I'm like, what would I do without having all of this? Like I describe my brain as like a safari with heaps of tabs open, right? And I just sort of flick and choose whatever mood I'm feeling in.
Yeah.
But like without those tabs, I could not function or do the work that I do, because I build, my knowledge and my experience, and what I learn and what I put into projects from experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I can relate to that a little bit. And I think what I found is that when you do so many things, obviously it makes you sound very impressive when you say it all, but realistically, actually the peaks of like your workload for all the different things rarely align. You're usually working really hard on one thing, but then something else is like a bit lower, and I think it becomes a bit more manageable. I've had experiences where two things have been really busy and my brain just went,
it just shuts down.
I
cannot process.
Yeah. Because regardless of maybe it's my muggle brain compared to hers.
Muggle brain. No.
But for me, it's like the limitation is not the brain, it's more the time. Like you only have 24 hours. I wish I had more time, really, to do more things, but
See, the way for me, sort of comparing to just listening to Justyce speak is, I feel like you say muggle, I say a very peasantish.
Drop me further.
Gotta go down the slope, because I find there's just a beautiful symbiosis with a lot of the things that you've done, because I guess the software goes with the engineering can mold into the medicine, and then I sort of think maybe I should have gone down that path as well, because again it's having that overview, and not like you said, having the tunnel vision, where a lot of people do think there are certain areas of work or certain studies that are very focused on just one thing. They don't know the connections that it can have and how it can sort of go in unison with a lot of other things. But yeah,
Yeah.
finance and medicine don't combine.
Look,
Nothing goes
no.
together.
Look,
So just keep that in mind.
No, I give it to you because I cannot do finance to save my life. I sat in a finance meeting in defense and I was like, this is not for me. I cannot do this. So I left as soon as possible.
Finance is so
Yeah.
interesting. I was reading this
Yeah.
book and it was like, finance is one of those things where some people will just get it straight away and it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And some people will just go their whole lives and it's like, no matter how much people explain it,
Yeah.
it's just, I can't understand.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But then the way I view it is engineering, medicine, all of that. I feel like it's like a real life, like we have to fall into it and we have to learn it. Whereas finance is something we've just created out of thin air, and it's just it's something that like doesn't have, I guess, natural laws to it. Doesn't have a natural.
Do you think so?
Yeah,
Because economics has always existed.
it's what?
Economics has always existed. I mean, back in the day, it used to be like sheep that we.
Yeah,
That's
trade.
But see, that's where the natural limitation was the amount of sheep that you had, or how close you were to people. Whereas like now, it's just
Now we have like debt.
you
Yeah.
print money. You just put zeros onto the computer, and I feel like there's no law to it. It's whatever law that everyone puts.
And maybe people go into finance, not so much. I mean, yes, to learn it, but more to take advantage of the system.
Is to take advantage, and then when you're good with numbers, but you don't want to have the curiosity, because then you can go into there's so many avenues that you can go in terms of if you are like very very versed in numeracy and astrophysics and things like that. But then a lot of people just don't have that curiosity.
Yeah.
Which would you guys mind sharing some curiosity?
Well, I was gonna say before, I was like something we've touched on in a couple episodes is like as we move forward in into the future of how technology is going, having an engineering degree, more than what the theory and everything it teaches you how to think. And something we were saying was that we need to somehow figure out how we can teach more people how to think like an engineer without having to have them do an engineering degree, if that makes sense. Because it's that rapid problem solving.
Yeah.
And I think moving forward with the pace that technology is growing at, if you don't know how to think like that, you get left behind.
Well, that's why we need to completely overhaul primary and secondary learning, because the whole foundation of it is rote learning.
Yeah.
It's recall learning. It's
Which learning, sorry?
like in primary school and high school, it's literally just recall like learning. It's whatever you learn from this textbook or whatever is taught you in the classroom. Come test time or come for an exam, just as long as you can memorize it, that's all you need. And it's maybe like 10-15% of, okay, use it in a certain scenario, and maybe we can give you a couple of extra points. But I feel like they need a complete overhaul of that to put that curiosity and thinking outside the box strategy in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. Awesome. I was going to actually lost my train of thought.
Sorry, I took a lot of track.
No. That's totally fine. So obviously we touched on to the future of healthcare in Australia, but you specifically went into research and something that I don't know, maybe I've always had an issue with, not an issue, I don't have a personal issue with research. No. But I've always found this, this pathway. There's always two pathways if you want to develop something, where it's you either you do research, you do PhD, you do academic, that side of you, or you go practical and you create a product.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you lean more towards? Because a lot of engineers do think practically and they think hands-on, and they want to see something, they want to build something.
Yeah.
So if you were interested in medical technologies, which is a field where there is a lot of physical products being developed as well, what made you want to go down that research path and not down the physical product development path?
Yeah. As I said before, like I love learning. But I think, it's not just academically. I love learning on a social level as well. I think it's very important if we, learn, listen, and inspire. And I think research can do it because you're learning about different disciplinaries. You're listening to them, and you can inspire others by it. I think with research, instead of going the more practical way, you can really think about, why am I doing this? A lot of people forget and they think, oh yeah, well, practically, let's just do this, 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 and this. And I'm like, well, what's the basis of it? What's your why you're doing it? Because that can sell products, right? That gets the emotional side of viewers, of what do you call it, panelists, to be able to want your product. So I think it's the why, and research helps me find the why. Not only that, it also helps me like in everyday life. Like as we were talking about with learning, I do have what you call an engineering brain, where I think of different outcomes, not only practically but theoretically. I did have someone tell me, you're thinking too much like an engineer, stop. You need to think like more emotionally. And I'm like,
Is this someone that's doing research?
No, this is Reg. Yeah, I had a bit of I didn't know what I was going to do. And he was just like, just stop. And you need to think like emotionally. But I was like, I can't, because if I think emotionally, like facts trump feelings, right?
Yes.
And they don't determine what is right and wrong.
Yeah.
So I am a very factual person. And I think that helps me with decision making, and that also helps me with my why. It balances the scales out.
So earlier you mentioned that you were doing a PhD.
Yes.
Could you expand? And you said biomarkers. Could you expand
biomarkers.
what that means?
Yeah. So biomarkers are detectors, early on-site detectors for cancer. So I'm doing prostate cancer, and we look for certain biomarkers or triggers that we can plug into our algorithm, and it can, show an output of, it sort of shows a slope on this side. So yeah, you've progressed to stage 2 cancer.
Really?
So yeah, we do that now, but it's more, how do I put this? It's manually done. It's more mundane. It takes away researchers and doctors from doing what they could actually do, which is more how initiative projects.
So when you say you take them away, you're saying instead of them being occupied doing that,
exactly. They could be doing better things within the research. So that's what the AI algorithm does and the platform does. But at the same time, they're not going to depend on it 100%. You're going to have doctors that check in and see if it's right. But yeah, that's basically what it is. Yeah.
So we touched, because a lot of the last couple of episodes has been on AI. And something that kept coming up was obviously displacement of jobs through AI. And I mean, what you just said kind of touched on that.
Yeah.
I mean, you said it nicely that they'll have something else to do.
They'll have something else to do.
But what do you think actually in the medical industry? Do you think a lot of jobs would be affected?
No, I don't think so. I mean, like I said before, I work at Pernix, which is a data company, and I'm an RPA developer, which is a robotics processing automation developer, where I take the mundane jobs of like claims and stuff and develop a program for unattended bot to be able to do it. So you can click a button and everything's done, process the claim. But with medicine, I do not think it will take away jobs. One, you have the human factor of a client. You can't just tell a bot to tell this person that they have cancer, because it would become blunt, and they'd have that emotional side of things. And two, you're always going to have this second validation of things, because you don't want to have someone being told that they're this far into having cancer when really they might not even be that far, or they might not have cancer. Sure. So there's that ethical side as well, which is a Pandora's box, I like to say. But yeah, I don't think it will take away jobs.
Do you think it would make cancer treatments cheaper? By reducing labor in those areas?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. From a research side, no, I don't think it would make it cheaper, because you obviously need so many people in a team, like
to develop
develop it. It's going to take time. It's going to take money. It's going to take technology that, as I said before, we don't have yet, which is infrastructure. That's another thing. We don't have certain infrastructure, especially in the medical sector. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, we were touching earlier. I mean, a couple episodes ago. I keep mentioning other episodes. Go back and watch them. About obviously, Ali used to be a credit assessor.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about your job and like potentially AI could do it. And the one thing that we mentioned was empathy. Like that's something that is so hard for an AI to.
I think it's almost impossible for AI to really have that human emotion into it, which is a good thing. Like obviously, it's a good thing because it stops you, and I think going into the medical side of things, it makes you take a step back and really think of the individual itself, and not just these things all align. This is the outcome. You really have to think outside the box sometimes. And there was something beautiful where it's like if the treatment's not working, then you have to question the diagnosis.
Yeah.
But then an AI will never question the diagnosis because it will say that these variables combined is most likely this outcome. It's never going to look back into it. But with AI, I've always looking into how it integrates with medicine. I've always thought it's a perfect combination. It will never trump each other. It will never overpower one another. But it goes so well hand in hand because you got to think, like a doctor to make a diagnosis, they need to know so many different factors.
Yeah.
Where if they can input those symptoms that the patient's having, then obviously the AI will give a rough outline of what it might be, and then it allows the doctor to really spend more time not looking at the mundane things and coming up with more of a precise and tailor-made experience for the patient.
Building on that as well, it's also like not even just emotional, it's the way that we're built as humans. When we're sick, when we were kids, we look for the comfort of our mother or our family. So in a medical sense, you want to be able to have contact with someone that you can sort of form a relationship and have trust with, so that when you are, if you're diagnosed and you've progressed that far and you're sick, you want to be able to have that relationship and connection to know that you trust them with your life, quite literally, if we're talking about that. So I think, I don't think that they will trump each other, and doctors are always going to be needed in the field, and I don't think AI will take over it.
I think that's very true. I mean, really, when you get a cancer diagnosis, you have an emotional response, and having like a human there to be able to take on that response. And look, a lot of the training that doctors get as well, part of the degree, is actually how to face patients and how to deal with different people reacting in different ways. And like my sister's doing, and this is not doctor in medicine, but she's doing occupational therapy at University of Adelaide now, and they've got simulated placement. It's brand new this year, and it's pretty crazy. But it's actually the building to like a couple buildings down from Lot 14, and it's a fake hospital inside. And the problem was that they were getting the like OTs and like physios and all these people to go out and do placement, but depending on where they went, each student would get a different experience because sometimes they would get really easy patients, sometimes they would get hard ones. So what they've done now is fully simulated. They even get like laptops and a work email. All the work emails they send goes to the lecturer to assess. They have fake patients who are paid actors. So cool. And so then the lecturers can control the situation. And so they can like cry on cue and have mental breakdowns.
And up the intensity.
Exactly. When they need to. And like it's such a cool...
No, but that's so good, like, because then it helps build their character.
Yes.
Like, how are you going to be able to, sit in a situation, this is why I could never be a vet, but like, how are you going to be in a situation where, they're crying intensively? How are you responsive comfort levels, right? Also helps you deal like professionally as well as socially, but then like it helps you on an intimate level because it gets you out of your comfort zone. And medicine really does that because you're talking with people every day. So it's good to have that environment where other people can control the variables for your character development.
Yeah. And then once you in that vet situation going forward with that, if you find out that you have to put the pet down, for example, if you have data from AI that has helped with that diagnosis, you can have better confidence that you're making the right decision, and then you can stand by that and help support the patient better. So I think overall it's a good thing. You did mention previously as well, I wanted to jump topic a little bit. You were working with Monash as well.
Yes.
Could you explain a bit more?
So I'm working with Monash University for an up-and-coming research project, and it is to do with native biodiversity, so Indigenous plants, because there's so many introduced pestilence. We are lacking, sadly. They're dying, which is not good because, traditionally they were used for medical purposes and we still use them today. And not only that, it's for ceremonies and just different cultural aspects. And it's sad to see them go and disappear, because how are we supposed to teach our next up and coming generation and as well as Greater Australia? But the research is focused on, it's basically like a giant ECG, but for native plants.
Wow.
So it can, it's through signal processing of the plants, and it can send a kill switch or signal to the plant if they're diseased in one grid. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, so could you explain what an ECG is?
Yeah, so it's
People that don't know.
an ECG.
Yeah,
An ECG is like a heart rate monitor, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure of the actual acronym. That's more medical terminology. And
Electrocardiogram. I know that.
let's go past that. But yeah, so it just basically takes all it's a biosensor, a giant biosensor for plants. If it takes in just all these chemical inputs and it processes them into a system.
And where do you see that going? What's that leading to?
My future and vision for it is for community purposes only, because it is native plants. Mine is direct, like my area of expertise is directed more to like park rangers, Indigenous rangers who are struggling to monitor plants. And, it just takes time to go out and, check each plant and each grid and each section. I'm like, well, why can't you just, create something that does it autonomously and, at the drop of your computer? That's where it came in. And, it'll help the community because it'll be run by the community. The kids will learn off the program in hopes that they will take on monitoring it and being able to sell the data that they have to other industries.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
So obviously you're working and doing a lot of research, and we've kind of touched on that already. What would you say is, what's the bottleneck in medical research in Australia? Is it lacking funding? Is it lacking people?
Yeah, infrastructure.
Really?
Yeah, infrastructure. I feel like even in space, like we have made like such progress, like great progress in like a short amount of years, but there's still so much that we don't have, like economically. And just not that, like people going into these research fields, we are lacking as well. So it's being able to carry on that infrastructure once it's built.
Yeah, when you say infrastructure, you mean like equipment?
Yeah, equipment, funding, like resources, like humans, like to be able to run it and process it and get the data. So yeah, those sort of three top areas.
Is it a case that a lot of the individuals that do end up going down those paths, they sort of get exported out to the countries that have that?
Really? Does that
funding?
happen?
So like sort of looking at the US, right? A lot of it, the reason why they're getting ahead is because of the privatization, because of how much money is in there. Which is why you see a lot of, I guess even sort of referring back to the cancer treatment and speaking about, is it going to get cheaper? It's around legislation, and it's about sort of having private companies allow the public to have access to it without the premium, because that's why you look at so many medicines as so expensive, is it's the money that the private companies put into it, which is why they profit from it. And they have a number of years for that formula that the government will allow them to maximize their profits for, before then it can sort of become...
Like a patent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think the way I see it is Australia really needs to push, the way it's pushing for defence, it needs to push for companies to start emerging, to be able to progress further in those areas. But then also like a catch-22 of it is, put in a process to not allow them to milk every single dollar from the end product.
Yeah. Not
Right.
only that as well, I know a lot of people who graduate, they do go overseas, and it's basically for that main purpose. It's in more demand. In Australia, don't have that demand, but if we did have that demand, they would stay here, and that money would come back.
And then it's the incentives that they provide.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. And even seeing a lot of companies from America, from overseas, they set up shop here, but ultimately the research and the end product gets shipped back over there.
Yeah.
Right, interesting. So obviously we've got, in South Australia, we've got University of Adelaide and University of South Australia merging together. And I know that if you go down North Terrace, you can see all the medical buildings.
Yeah.
So that obviously coming together you'd have a greater pool of resources together. Do you see that as a good thing for medical technology? And what are your thoughts on the merger?
How do I put this? I don't really care much about the merger, if that makes sense. I just want to graduate. As long as I'm a person where, as long as it doesn't affect me, I don't care. Go for it. But look, for funding wise and research wise, there's I don't know, there's yes and no. I mean, like, it depends, because these departments have to come together, and it's like, if you move schools around a lot like me, but if during high school, if you move to another school, it's like making new friends, and you're not going to agree on certain things, and you're going to want more funding in this topic area, or no, I want it in this area. So you're going to have to be able to come to a table and agree. I think that's where the yes and no comes in. But if you keep the main goal, or the main the base foundation of it, as we want to benefit Australia, like economically, but also statistically with diagnoses in medicine, or just the medical field in general, then I think you would get pretty far. But if you just have it set on what you want to do, or what your research team wants to do before the merge, if that makes sense, I don't think you're going to get very far.
Yeah. It is, Australia does, for the small population that we have, a lot does come out of it, and I think that's really good. So
I think in terms of that question, the way I see it is, I actually don't think it's going to affect it too much, just because of the way I always saw UniSA and Adelaide is they had two completely different agendas in terms of the courses that they're really focused on. I think if UniSA actually was their end target of their goals were similar to what Adelaide, because Adelaide is known for the medicine, Adelaide is known for engineering, all of that.
Yeah.
Whereas UniSA is known for finance, commerce, architecture, and all of that. Where I think if essentially it falls down to the previous episode we spoke about, competition drives innovation, and ultimately having a competitor in the industry forces you to really focus harder and really push towards that. Whereas I think if you're the only one in that industry, it allows you to step back. So I think it would have been a more detrimental outcome if it was Adelaide Uni and Flinders combining than Adelaide Uni and UniSA.
Oh, because a lot of them have similarities.
It aligns,
That's true.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, obviously we are running out of time, and there's so much more. There's literally so much more we could talk about. And we would love to obviously have you on in the next episode. Maybe I always wanted to do this thing where we ask our first guest something for the next guest, or even what's a topic that maybe you don't know a lot about that you want to hear about more, or even if you had access to a podcast like this when you were maybe in year 12 or maybe just starting uni, what kind of information would you have wanted to know? Do you have any feedback for us? Or?
Yeah. What do I talk about?
I'm sure he knows so much.
No, I just, next guest, what I would love, growing up, I was always interested in archaeology and computer science and detection of archaeology with computer science. So I thought that would be pretty cool. I haven't met anyone here in Adelaide that has ever, that has done it. So I would love to, because I just think it's so fascinating to be able to use a satellite to zone in on an area and see it like 100 years ago and see the infrastructure and the even like for burial sites and just the ceremonies and how it all happens. I think that would be so amazing.
That's
Yeah.
really cool.
I would personally love to see
Yeah.
that.
At the top 5 things I would have thought you were going to say.
That's not. But
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely.
That's really
Yeah.
cool.
Such a good topic.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
other than that,
That really puts a lot of pressure on us.
I know.
Yeah.
Look, hey,
Yeah.
we'll make it
No,
happen.
But I mean, like, look, something that's pretty basic. I guess, like, just data management. Like, even just in the medical industry, like, you know, you have so much data of pre-existing patients and existing patients. How are you going to manage it? I think that's another thing, and like implementing it, because doctors take so long to implement systems that have already been created. I think because they're just so used to doing the same thing over and over again, and when they do get the system, they're a bit about touching it. But yeah, I think data management and just having more secure certainty so that they can take on these systems. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
Mm.
Well, I think we might wrap up for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thanks
very
for
much
having me,
coming
guys.
and being our
Thank you.
first guest.
There's one last question, right? And maybe Vision can ask that. What about women? Women in STEM. So maybe you can just ask a question about that. And, like,
Yeah.
Okay.
get to some
Oh,
inspiration
okay,
for
yeah.
Women in engineering.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, I
I was like,
came across
I
my
think
head
I'm so used to
briefly.
men though. I'm just like, oh, I'm one of the guys.
Because I think that's what we said, like at one
Yeah,
stage, where it's like,
exactly what she said.
yeah, it's very hard to come by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How was it? I mean, growing up,
Yeah.
I mean, through high school, like physics classes.
Yeah. I mean,
university.
Look, it's definitely growing up, being Indigenous, you have your role. If you're a woman, then you have certain roles in society that you do. And if you're a man, you do certain roles and practices that women don't do and that men don't do. So coming to where it's like heavily dominated with men, or like, you know, it's not really that much of a difference to me, because growing up I've always been pushed back with, you know, like culturally. But no, I do find like coming into environments where I'm the only girl on the team, I sort of have to man up. You know, I have to, if I want to be here, this is my passion, I'm going to be here, and I'm going to make myself known in a room whether you like it or not. And I feel like being blunt and honest helps. But also, you know, over time, like the development, men get used to women being in the team. Like it's amazing how fast, I guess, and yeah, I'm going to say personally, it's amazing how fast the change has come around for men just sort of, you know, acknowledging women in the workforce, even though we're few and far between. But yeah, at the same time as well, we have a lot of way to go, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, I
Yeah.
agree. And I think a lot of that comes back to high school.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of talent. There's 50% of the population now. I think there's a lot of talent there. I think if we can expose STEM in a way that you know, works to the strengths that women have that are different to men,
Yeah.
and to show that, you know, this is an outlet that you can use as well.
Yeah.
I think we can definitely go.
Yeah, I'm gonna play like devil's advocate here and not be like really positive about women in STEM, but you know, at the same time, like realistically, you've got to think about it. Not a lot of women are going into STEM, right? Especially engineering. So you can't just say, oh, let's promote this and promote that, and we need to change this and this and this. And I'm like, yeah, but think realistically. There's not a lot of women coming in, so you know, it's going to take time to be able to change it. And I think, as you said, going to high school students is the first step.
Look, I was talking about this exact problem to a friend of mine, and it was that the problem with artificially increasing inequality in women in the workforce, especially in places like engineering, is you obviously, if you rank right now in the field, if you rank engineers based on competence and like hireability for companies, you will get more men naturally. But if a company's HR department decides they want to hire more women because they want to show that, what they can do is when you hire for a role, you are interviewing one person and you're not being compared to anyone else. It's just you and the panel.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to justify things and to get them in the team.
Yeah.
And then if the company is going well, there's no problem. And you start growing a workforce, let's say it's like 30% women or 35% women and the other men.
Yeah.
The problem becomes when the economy starts going bad and you have to start going through redundancies. That when you go through that process, all employees are compared to each other,
Mhm.
and it's like it's not about HR anymore. It goes to the finance department,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
like whatever the best ROI is, keep them and cut the rest.
Yeah. I completely agree because like I was talking to a guy and he posted like a position on LinkedIn and all the applicants were men. And when a man was hired for that role, you get backlash of, oh, well, how come women aren't doing it? And I'm like, well, they're not applying.
Yeah.
That's the basic.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? You can't. And it's exactly the same with finance. You know, it's competence. But I do think women can bring that competence.
Absolutely.
But you know, you got to think realistically. Like it's just at the moment, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think where women do need to increase is actually in visibility. Not so much in the workforce. I think that comes naturally. But I think what we need to show girls that are growing up that there are a lot of women doing this. And it's something that Lewis Hamilton actually really advocated for in Formula One. He said that when they were showing the garages, they're all guys in the workshops, right? It's like show more women to show that they, you know, it's not just the racing that's the role. There's a lot of roles in that space.
Yeah.
Show like women in the field doing the jobs to be like, I can do this one day.
Inspire.
They need to be able to see themselves in that position.
Yeah.
And
it's so funny you say that because I was watching Shark Tank. I watch it a lot actually. But there was this company and they did like bandages, but for darker skinned people. And I thought that was so interesting because subconsciously you don't think about it, right? But like now that I think about it, yeah, I would want a bandage that's my own skin color because it promotes diversity. And like on the boxes of the bandage packets, they'd have women in like in astronaut suits or racing car suits, as well as men in like, you know, cooking or anything like that. It's a whole diversity. And I'm like, it's just these small changes that help the changing of kids' like minds and thinking.
yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we haven't really fully announced it, but we're going to be working on some stuff together with DEXA.
Yeah.
And we're really excited to kind of actively, practically apply those in the future in schools and stuff. So, yeah, awesome. Well, I think now we can end.
Now we can wrap things up.
Thanks.